Greetings. Cynical prick here. I'm going to discuss another repugnant group of people. Pro-lifers. Pro-lifers are sanctimonious and typically religious nutcases that advocate science. How ironic. They advocate science, yet somehow God is introduced to their debates. So let's get into it and nip these misconceptions in the ass. How can you prove that? Pro-lifers are simply just fat retarded NASCAR watching stains on society. It's simple. Use the scientific method. 1. Observation. Acknowledge what a life is. A life is anything that is biologically living and has organs or organelles that interacts with its environment. Acknowledge that an embryonic cell is a life in biological terms. It's technically living. But is it equivalent to a conscious being? Absolutely not. You fucking troglodytes. An embryo doesn't participate in the stock market and have therapy sessions. 2. Question. Now that you've acknowledged what a life is in technical terms, use their argument against them. Pro-lifers believe that life begins at conception and that an embryonic cell structure is a potential life. Correct, it is a potential life. Want to know what else is living that possesses potential for life? Sperm cells. Would masturbation be genocidal? Would killing a fly be murder because it is a life despite it lacking complex cognitive functions like humans? So basically, pro-lifers are using an emotional fallacy to justify forcing 13-year-old rape victims to conceive children. 3. Hypothesis. Acknowledge that the way they ascribe any significance to a life and where it starts is circumstantially flawed. What they're using is a logical fallacy known as appealing to emotion. They're equating the life of an embryo to a developed and conscious human being that's receptive to pain stimuli, that's capable of possessing cognition. If we have to suggest the termination of an embryo is murder, we'd have to suggest that masturbation is murder. 4. Continuing the hypothesis. Acknowledge what murder is according to the court of law. According to the court of law in the United States Code 1111, it states clearly, murder is the unlawful killing of a human being with malice aforethought. When this is taken into consideration even from a legal standpoint, when do we consider a child a human? The court of law states the following: 1 U.S. Code Section 8, person, human being, child, and individual as including born alive infant. Now that you've acknowledged that even the court of law ascribes life to a child after birth, from a legal standpoint, a child is not a child or has human rights until it is born. 5. Conclusion. Now that we've discussed even from a legal standpoint what murder is declared to be, acknowledge that the law itself is a fallacy of authority, but only use it as a source and not an argument for the objective nature of what murder is. Murder essentially is the termination of a conscious being. Fun fact, at 22 weeks a developing fetus is receptive to pain stimuli. Although it doesn't possess complex cognitive functions, we can argue that abortion is immoral because there is a victim. A discussion on when to draw the line on abortion should be necessary. But retarded pro-lifers believe this folly that a fetus has a soul and an embryo is the egg of God. Fucking idiots. 6. A woman's rights. The notion within the pro-choice demographic is that since it is their body, it should be their choice to receive an abortion. However, conflicting arguments suggest that a zygote is a separate, individual, or being. Wrong. It is still a developing organism that's attached to an organ known as the placenta, where the embryonic structure receives its nutrients in order to live. Its life is contingent on the woman's body for continuing its development. Keyword. Development. Fully developed and conscious. No, you numbskulls. 7. The popular "would you cut someone from life support because they're unconscious" argument. The flaw in this argument is that it's a false equivalency. The individual on life support is not a developing organism in the womb. It's an actual human life with experience. Pro-lifers suggest that abortion at any stage of development is murder. Again, we're comparing a non-sentient organism to a fully developed life. Acknowledge that when the individual or patient is given the power of attorney to cut the individual from life support, is that murder? Yes and no, but it's the individual's choice when the unconscious being doesn't have one, and there's circumstances you don't understand that made them make that choice. Ultimately, to end the suffering of a human being. Which brings us to our ultimate conclusion. What being a pro-lifer entails. 8. Being a pro-lifer is not ultimately virtuous and morally rounded, especially under the conditions which Roe v. Wade was overturned. There are harsh consequences for this. Women who are fully developed humans have the possibility of dying during the birthing process due to serious fertility issues. Because fuck with fully developed human right? Teenagers and women who are raped will be forced to carry and conceive a child. If your idea of being pro-life is allowing other children who are fully developed mind you to carry a child after being sexually assaulted, you are not pro-life. If your idea of being pro-life is allowing a child to endure years of alienation, disgust from its parents, abandonment, and emotional trauma, you are not fucking pro-life. You are a dogmatic, biased, and spiteful piece of shit who is more concerned about attacking the character of a woman or a political group rather than addressing the issues within one's life to determine the quality of what being alive means. You're no better than someone telling a dog owner to keep a suffering dog alive. You're not pro-life. You're an asshole on Facebook stuck in a culture war with nothing to prove, and your celebration of the overturning of Roe v. Wade is indicative of your political extremism.